Ganondorf is easily one of the most iconic villains in gaming history. Even though he had been absent for 15 years before returning in Tears of the Kingdom, he was still far and away one of the Zelda series' most recognizable figures. As such, I think it's fair to say the character of Ganondorf is a success story. But things can always be better. And when it comes to the Gerudo King, I think there are definitely clear and even relatively easy ways to improve him, to make him more compelling, while not decreasing his intimidation factor one bit. I'll explain how exactly in a moment, but first I want to make one thing very clear. Ganondorf should, in my opinion, never be sympathetic or redeemable. Maybe calling it a trend is not entirely correct, but I feel like these days making a villain compelling is too often translated into making them sympathetic or morally grey instead of black and white. Don't get me wrong, this can work exceptionally well in some cases, but for Ganondorf specifically, it does not. Ganondorf isn't a person who made some bad choices, who fights for what he believes is right but uses questionable methods, or was pushed by society towards a life of evil. Ganondorf is evil. Ganondorf is hatred and malice personified, a resurrection of the embodiment of evil that is demise. A version of Ganondorf that is born good or neutral but becomes a villain would be a huge deviation of what his character in essence boils down to. You shouldn't be able to sympathize with him or consider him to be a good guy in any sense of the word. That's not his role. Don't get me wrong, I'm totally open to a Zelda villain that is sympathetic and morally grey, but if that is the direction Nintendo wants to take, then I would suggest introducing a new villain, instead of turning Ganondorf into that. However, there is a difference between sympathetic, i.e. I could see myself doing this, and believable, or I could see someone else doing this. That is, in my opinion at least, where Ganondorf has room to grow. His being may be the embodiment of evil, but his goals and motivations don't have to be. Simply put, it isn't made believable enough that Ganondorf would want his current often seen goal of plunging the world into chaos and misery. What does he stand to gain from that? I understand that it aligns with his similar quest for power, as is befitting of his Piece of the Triforce, but while a desire for power is a believable and realistic goal, what Ganondorf usually does with his power feels strange. Usually when people strive for power, they do so because of self-enrichment, giving themselves the ideal life in whatever way they want. And to an extent, Ganondorf does that as well. Both he and Demise's goal is to throw the world back to what it was before, one where peace is far from reality and monsters rule the land. I mean, this happens in several games. Ocarina of Time, Twilight Princess, Breath of the Wild all have Ganondorf winning for extended or short periods of time. But what do we see him doing once he has won? Chilling in his castle, mostly. Playing a little organ, enjoying the way the throne feels on his butt. That's about it. It doesn't show us this world plunged in darkness as something he actually desires, it only tells us. Almost as something created by the developers to build him up as antagonist instead of a compelling villain within the game's world. Is this truly Ganon's ideal goal? This is the power he strives for? Currently the answer is yes, but I feel like he would massively improve if the answer was no, or rather not entirely. It's, ironically enough, why I believe Calamity Ganon from Breath of the Wild is actually one of the best working Ganons, despite it barely being a character. That incarnation, as described by the developers themselves even, make him feel more like a natural disaster, something inevitable. And since natural disasters don't have plans, goals or dreams, the state Hyrule was left in makes perfect sense. But in most other versions, Ganondorf is still a person. Someone with goals, plans and dreams, but we don't see enough of those. It boils down to a simple but undercooked evil for the sake of being evil, kinda like Bowser, who he's often compared to. But Mario and Zelda are completely different series in terms of tone and content. What works for Bowser as a self-aware standard evildoer doesn't work for Ganondorf. Alright, so I think it should be clear what my problem with current Ganondorf is. Let's talk about how to fix it. How do you make him more compelling and understandable without making him more sympathetic? Well, I think the easiest way to do so is to work on his motivation. His goals can still be fueled with the flames of Demise's eternal curse, but having a personal motivation for Ganondorf to take over Hyrule beyond power for power's sake would really help. Give him a vision for the land, even if it is one that shrouds the region in darkness and has monsters running wild. I want a good reason why Ganondorf should want that, which can be something simple, like an extreme version of the belief that might makes the man, or it can be something much more complex and personal, like expanding on Ganon's desire for power by highlighting insecurities that drive him towards that in the extreme. Again, I don't mean a sad backstory, I mean an origin that explains and makes believable why Ganondorf is so power hungry beyond just because the mice told him to. In fact, I'd say more backstory in general could help make him a more compelling figure. After all, Ganondorf isn't some divine being. Just like Link in Zelda, he's just a person in Hyrule with a destiny much grander than most. His just dips towards the evil scale. He was also young once, he was also raised. He perhaps even had friends or at least acquaintances, especially as King of the Gerudo. And while I don't think, say, bad experiences with them is what should drive Ganondorf towards a path of evil, they can help steer how he walks it. What decisions he makes, what plans he comes up with, and how he treats the land under his rule are all things that can be influenced more by each incarnation of Ganondorf's individual experiences, without making him lose those intrinsic evil qualities. And there is actually already an incarnation of Ganondorf that kinda hints at something like this, even if I don't think it sticks the landing entirely. I'm talking about Wind Waker Ganondorf, who is easily the most nuanced and three-dimensional he has ever been. While he still wishes for a Hyrule to rule, there are also hints here of a Ganon who has considered the fate of his Gerudo home, who realizes the gods have flooded the land and destroyed the Hyrule that was, just to stop him. And a big part of the reason why this works, why Ganondorf can be more nuanced in this game, is because he has a backstory, Ocarina of Time. This is a much older and wiser Ganondorf, who has lived a full life with experiences we have seen him live, making his reflections on his being and the state of the world a lot more poignant. Now, again, I don't think Wind Waker sticks the landing entirely, seeing as his goal still seems to be I want to rule Hyrule just because, and he makes too few appearances in the game to really flesh him out, but it does give us a hint of what's possible. Another way Ganondorf's story and rise to power could be made more complex is by giving him more of a relationship with Link or Zelda. The Mice's Curse contains no must-have connection between either of the three Triforce holders, and yet Link and Zelda are basically always friends or more before they're even made aware of their powers, while Ganondorf is a lone wolf, disconnected from the other two. It doesn't have to be that way. I'm not saying Ganondorf has to be a childhood friend of Link or anything, although I am very curious to see how that would pan out. Maybe something like a mentor or a rival would work better. Or at least someone who means something to Link or Zelda in whatever way. I guess Ocarina of Time probably came closest to that, with Ganondorf definitely being reminiscent of a rival to Link, even if there was no pre-existing connection. But yeah, I think it would be really cool, and there would be a ton of potential for Ganondorf to be a figure in Link or Zelda's lives before he either reveals or becomes the Grand Evil, either through the power of the Triforce or because he had a secret agenda all along. Making it so we as players don't immediately pick up on that might be a bit more tricky. Good luck introducing a male Gerudo without making us incredibly suspicious, but hey, Aonuma and his team have blown us away countless times, I'm sure they can figure it out. How would you make Ganondorf more complex? In fact, do you even agree with me in the first place that Ganon could be made more interesting? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed my ideas, please consider giving this video a like and subscribing to the channel to stay updated on all my future Zelda content coming up. For now, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.